All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Empire Secrets. I'm your host, Mariana Henninger. One of the things that I most like to talk about is communication, how to do it better, how important it is. And not only that, but communication, in relationship building, right? Because if we're doing marketing, I believe it's all built around trust, and we can't build trust without communicating well. And so today on the podcast, I have Ravi Rajani with us. He is a keynote speaker. He's a coach. He's a LinkedIn learning instructor. Over 65,000 people have taken his course on conscious and charismatic communication. So he's a true expert at this. And he is launching a new book very, very soon called Relationship Currency. And he's also worked with organizations like Oracle NetSuite and T-Mobile, Sherwin-Williams, which is so fascinating to me because it's folks that are in the online space and obviously more traditional corporate brands that have been around for a very long time. So Ravi knows the scope of it all, and I can't wait to dive in to, some of the amazing gems that he has for us on communication, but also really, really intrigued by his new book on relationship as a currency. So Ravi, without further ado, I want to dive into this conundrum that my audience has. So a lot of folks in my audience get told that they have to be visible all the time. So visibility is like a big, big word for us. And, that obviously plays this scenario in our heads of we have to be putting a ton of content out. We have to be in all of the places at the same time. When I think of relationship currency, I think of the opposite of that. I think of going deeper instead of going wide and shallow. How would you speak to an audience who's been told by everyone that visibility is key?
I would say it depends on who we're talking to. So I know your audience is founders, entrepreneurs. A lot of them run founder-led businesses, but I would say who are we talking to? So for example, Ravi in his 20s, very different human being to Rav at 36, who's married with 2 kids. And visibility may mean different things to me depending on the season of life that I'm in. So the way I would see it through my lens and my perspective and my truth is thinking about where does my ideal audience hang out, online and offline, and learning how to be visible in those communities and figuring out what your zone of genius is and using that as a vehicle for adding value inside of those communities.
When you decided to write your book, what was the myth that you wanted to bust? So maybe it wasn't the visibility myth, but it was something else. What is the common belief that people have that you wanted to address in your book?
The book, so it's a really good question. I'm closing my eyes because I'm thinking about it because I've never been asked this question. So for me personally, what I started to realize that was happening in the world is I would go from conversation to conversation. And as the world got busier and busier, and as the world got noisier and noisier, and AI started to really take its place, the level of transactional conversations shot through the roof. The level of instant gratification and our desire for more shot through the roof. And what I believe deep in my core is that today, regardless of who you are, regardless of what you sell, whether it's yourself, whether it's an idea in a meeting or a solution, everything you desire is on the other side of another human being saying yes to you. So more so than ever before, human connection. People are starved of it. And that is one of the most potent ways to stand out. And the vehicle for really learning how to connect with people on a deeper level, for me, is effective and influential communication. So for me, what I really wanted to give people was my perspective, combining personal development principles as well as communication frameworks and practices, and combining them and using it as a vehicle for building trust, which is what I know is really important to you. Building trust, cultivating authentic relationships, and ultimately sparking sales, leadership, and business growth.
This is probably the most timely conversation for us to be having.
Yeah.
I have been kind of back to back in-person events, which I had, like most people since the pandemic, not gone to a ton of events and slowly
Mm,
started going back to more events. In fact, I was randomly invited to an in-person event conference that was happening in New York last week. So I was invited on Wednesday and it was happening Thursday and Friday. So I like cleared my schedule. I went, and as I was processing how much richness has come from meeting people in person, cultivating those relationships. I have a list of people that I have now followed up with, connected with, and constantly keep thinking, like, how can I know I'm asking a lot of them, not everyone, but some of them would be such great strategic partners for me. And
mm.
I'm constantly thinking, what can I give them instead? How can I serve them? Who can I connect them with? How can I bring value to their world? But what you just said is so critically important, but also just very relevant to me personally. So I'm so excited that we're going to dive into the principles that you mentioned and also the frameworks, kind of unpack this for us. Where do we begin when we're thinking about leveraging these relationships? And as you said, they could be the most important, lever in your business, the most important mover in your business. But I'm sure you're not teaching people how to approach people as like, how far can you help me get in my business? So unpack that for us, Ravi. What are the sort of underlying principles of your framework? And then if you could walk us through some of those steps.
Yeah, definitely. So, by the way, before I get into it, how was the networking event? I bet you felt drained afterwards compared to pre-pandemic, or were you just hyped
Oh,
afterwards?
I love it.
Okay,
I feel like, yeah, I was definitely one of those folks that suffered during the pandemic from not being
right,
around people, from not chatting.
right.
So I'm all about it. I'm not drained at the end of an event. I'm like, bring
Okay.
it on. Where's the encore day? Yeah. But I understand that some people are like, oh my gosh, I need like 5 days of not talking to anybody.
Yeah, they want to be alone in solitude to recharge their batteries. I feel you. I feel you. So, on
Are
that
you on
point,
that camp? Are you more in that camp than
I'm somebody who loves people. I love stages. I love networking events and big audiences, but I charge up my batteries in solitude. So I
mm,
love my own company as well. That duality often people struggle with when they go, "Oh, I thought you'd just be an outright extrovert." If we had to give labels, which we can go into
yeah.
in a second, which actually is inside of habit one of my book, but if I had to give myself a label, it would be an ambivert. But I lean on a lot of extroverted character traits. But hey, I love inner peace. I love
Yes.
solitude, right? I
Yes.
love it. I do. I do. And on that question of the sort of path that somebody can take when it comes to earning relationship currency, there's 5 habits which I teach. The first is transforming your internal story. And the idea here is learning how to build self trust before you can build trust with others. And then the second
Mm.
habit is learning how to ask conscious questions. So when I say conscious questions, Mariana, I'm talking about questions which are grounded in intentional, or rather, questions grounded in positive intentionality. And we can go
Oh
deeper
my
into
gosh.
that
Yeah.
and
Can
combining
we
that.
pause for a second and talk about self-trust for a minute? I feel
Yeah,
like there're going to be like so many pillars into each of these 5 steps, but
sure.
just unpack it for us a little bit more. So, what the heck is self-trust, or how are you presenting self-trust? Why is that important to kind of have figured out before you really invest in more relationships?
Sure. So, habit one focuses on transforming your internal story. And yes, the idea is building
Mm,
self trust with yourself. And what I deeply believe in is that if we can firstly find solitude, regulate our nervous system, and really figure out, zoom out, hey, what does Mariana want in this season of her life? What does Ravi want in this season of his life? And we can really dream big, play big, that childlike
mm,
imagination. No society saying you can't do this, you can't do that, literally removing any resistance. And if we can tap into, hey, what our authentic self wants and really scribble down that desire. What is it in this season of our
mm,
life? And then I say, okay, look, we want to be fixed on the desire, which will evolve as we evolve, which is cool, but we want to be flexible on the path. So let's say you've got a founder led business and you say, I want more revenue. Bit too broad, but let's just run with it. I want more revenue. Now, somebody says, hey, the path to getting there is net new business. And they
mm.
start going crazy, building all the strategies for outbound. And all of a sudden, they realize there's a beautiful opportunity with the existing customers they have. And actually going deeper is the path to helping them achieve that desire. So it's about really being, once again, fixed on the desire and flexible on the path, and removing our death grip on the desire, of the desire, which can really, in my opinion, prevent us from showing up powerfully in a conversation. It can prevent us from really being present in a conversation, say like this, and it can prevent us from really having more influence. And it really boils down to the idea that in order to begin that process of pursuing that desire from alignment in business, it begins with examining the stories that we tell ourselves. And I can safely say, from the different people that I've coached over the years, trained, or whatever it could be, more often than not, there's always this subtle story, a hidden story that is governing their internal world, which is creating their external world, but more importantly, shifting the way they communicate. So let's say, for example, somebody says, and this is an example I give in the book, and it's loosely based upon a private client of mine back in the day. This individual would say, I'm a techie. I'm a techie. That's the label they would give themselves. And as a result, they had a belief that techies are behind the scenes. Techies are individuals who just sit in the background. They're better at ops. So what would happen? They would play into that label. They would shrink their desires, and they would act in a way that is congruent with that label that they were given by their leader, maybe a decade or 15 years ago. So the idea is, okay, what's the label that we've worn for years? What is a belief that comes with that label? And then, hey, what is the associated story that we're telling ourselves? Maybe it's techies aren't great presenters. Techies aren't great communicators. I am a boring or monotone communicator, whatever it could be. And then it really is about learning how to reframe that narrative and start building positive evidence for the new story you want to tell yourself, and really ensuring that you're creating more evidence daily to anchor in that new narrative. And when you fall off track, because we all do, having a personal practice to ground you and root you in your narrative, so you can begin behaving like the person who's already received their desires and collapse time on that journey. So all of that boils down to the fact that when we have more self-trust in our decisions, when we have more self-trust by looking internally, we can then begin building trust with others and having more influence.
I got it. So when you say self-trust, can I replace that with confidence from a place of certainty that I deserve this, I am this person, I'm not governed by the boundaries that this label would bestow upon me? Is that another way of saying this?
Yes, it's how, if you've received it that way, then let's run with that. Everybody's going to have their own interpretation of it.
Okay.
And
I just want to make sure I got the gist of it. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. And so I'm guessing this sets us up for the next step, right? These are the building blocks towards getting to a place where we can build relationships in a way that are really fruitful, really, empower us, empower each other, build a better world, build better businesses, right? So walk me through step 2.
So habit 2 focuses on asking conscious questions. And the idea here is that if we're talking about earning and building relationship currency with another human being, what we really need to do is first start building a relationship with ourselves, which happened in habit 1, beginning that journey of introspection. And now you're going to learn how to build a relationship with others. And the best starting point in my books, in my opinion, through my lens, is asking conscious questions. So when I say conscious questions, I'm talking about questions which are grounded in positive intentionality. And I teach several different types of questions: story-worthy questions, fact-worthy questions, empathetic questions, collaborative questions. But the one question which I find has the most impact for people, and people could take away from this podcast right here, right now, is empathetic questions. And when I say empathetic, I'm talking about asking questions that show somebody that you are interested in what they are emotionally invested in. I mean, Mariana, how many times have you had a conversation with somebody where they're asking you questions it sounds good on paper. It looks good on paper, but something feels off. It feels like a box ticking exercise and it lacks depth,
Mm.
it lacks meaning. And hey, surface level questions equate to surface level relationships. Have you ever felt that?
I would say yes, but I'm usually the one asking a lot of questions. So I'm like,
Really? Okay.
I come from a journalism background, right? So for
Yeah.
15 years, my entire career was learning about the person that I was speaking to. And
Mm.
so I get what you're saying very well. I think not everyone is like naturally the one who's asking questions, or maybe they're asking questions like you mentioned, as like, I know I'm supposed to ask questions, right? I know I'm supposed to just be interested in this person, but how do I do it? And I think that's what you're getting at, asking empathetic questions. So how do you define an empathetic question?
So one of
It means that
the
you care, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's caring about what somebody cares about. So let's walk through an example. I teach something called the what, feel, who method, which is
Mm,
ideally figuring out in our conversation today, right? In our conversation today, my job is to figure out the what, feel, who, meaning what does Mariana care about in this season of her life? How does she feel about it? And
mm,
who in her life is this impacting? So in my next conversation,
mm,
I can say, for example, hey, Mariana, last time we spoke, you mentioned that you were moving home, but you were feeling super stressed because your kiddo was really unhappy about the change. How was she settled in?
mhm.
That versus how are you? Completely different. How are you in the, there's a time and place for that. But in most instances, it's a lazy question, period. It's
Yeah,
lazy. In a
yeah.
relationship you're trying to build depth with, it is nothing but lazy. In a new relationship, okay, I get it. You need to ask, how are you? Maybe it's a broad, open-ended question or what I call a story-worthy question to begin with. But being more intentional in our conversations is
Mm,
important and asking the right questions. So let's say you're a founder who's just hired a new team member. You're trying to build rapport with them. Your job is to figure out one, what they care about in this season of their life and become emotionally invested in it. So if you say to a team member, hey, 2 weeks ago, you mentioned to me that you were feeling super excited because your husband had just bought a new puppy. Like that suddenly builds
mhm.
rapport in a way that's very different to
Yeah.
rushing into that meeting, grabbing that sandwich 5 minutes late from your previous meeting, and be like, anyway, how are you? That
Yeah.
lacks
Yeah,
intention.
yeah.
It lacks intention. So the what, feel, who method is a beautiful way, in my opinion, and I'm biased, it's a really beautiful way to communicate with prospects, customers, partners, stakeholders, whoever it could be, that, hey, I care about what you care about. And
Yeah.
really, at a fundamental level, that's important. I mean, look, listen, you said something interesting. You said that you've always been the one asking questions. So, my question to you is, I'm curious, do you ever feel like, man, nobody's interested in me? I'm always the one asking questions. Who does that for you?
Oh, they do eventually. Yeah, eventually it comes around. I feel like that's not true. Sometimes there will be a conversation where I'm deeply invested in the other person
Hmm.
and they didn't even bother to ask. And the reality is if they ask even a little bit, there's always a million threads to pull on for my story.
Right.
So they would be the people who pulled the threads or asked the questions get a lot of richness from my story,
Mm.
but there have been a couple instances where I'm like, huh, that person didn't even ask me about me. And, obviously, so, as I'm hearing you compare the differences between a fast and, McDonald's style, how are you? And this beautiful, elaborate, chef curated, garden harvested meal, which is asking a question that's like beautifully intentional about that person's what they care about, which is what I'm hearing you say. And I love that. That's what my work is all about. It's not your story, it's how are you making them feel. And that's based on what's going on in their lives, right? And
Mm.
so it's making me think of the difference between a lot of the AI slop slash chat GPT content that is over flooding our feeds versus when you take the time to write something that's really specific, really intentional, really beautiful. And of course, when you're doing one to many, which is not what you're talking about a one-to-one conversation. But when you're doing one to many, I feel like there's always a difference in the folks that take time to create content that's like specific and deep and intentional and different, because they have their audience in mind versus like, let me just give you value. Psh, similar approach, I would say, in the
Yeah,
two ways.
definitely. And something you said, it interested me because you talked about storytelling, which is really your world and it has been for decades, is it not? Storytelling is your bread and butter. And one of the things I feel is important when it comes to storytelling is actually starting with learning how to have somebody tell you their story. So I'll give an example. I could say
Mm,
in a prospect, say I'm talking to a prospect, say I'm talking to a customer, I could say, do you want to switch suppliers? The response I'm going to get is yes or no, or not sure, really. Limited.
mm,
In the right context, fine. But in our context of wanting to extract a story as a response, it's ineffective. So the simple switch, which I'm about to make, can change everything. So I could instead say, hey, could you tell me about the moment when you first realized I need to switch suppliers? All of a sudden, that human being is traveling back in time to
mm.
unearth a story for you. Alternatively, you hear this, nothing.
Yeah.
You hear nothing. And that is actually the holy grail of what I call a story worthy question, aka an open ended question. When you stop somebody in their tracks and you provoke thought, it tells
Mhm.
somebody a story about you, that you have a character of intention because you ask potent and conscious questions. So the types of questions you ask really can tell somebody a story about you. Now, the flip side of that is
Mm.
you can ask great questions, but if you aren't truly listening,
Oh, yeah.
you do yourself a disservice.
Mhm. Yeah, it's almost like you've gone halfway, right? Like you need to bring it full circle, which is pay attention to what they're answering and sort of build upon that. And I see you doing that, Ravi, in this conversation where you're like, you're feeding back to me the things that you've heard from me, but in a completely different, construct, which means that you've taken what I've said about myself or, the little bits that I've shared and you've internalized them and you're sending signals back my way that you're like, this is coming in, Mariana. Like I'm hearing you in a deep way, in an intentional way. I'm loving all of this. I want to go back to habit number 3 and keep us moving
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that
yeah.
direction. See that the habits are building upon each other. That's what I feel. Is that fair to say?
I'd hope so. Yeah, I'd hope so. The goal is
That
for
was
the
good too.
habits. Yeah, the habits. The goal is for them to stack, no doubt, and also the practices within the habits, which are laid out in the book, for example, are designed to really create true behavioral change and ensure that at some point these behaviors become instinctive, aka you
Mhm.
reach unconscious competence with the skill set in question. And a lot of
Mm.
people, start out at the bottom of that process, which is unconscious incompetence. They don't know what they don't know. I mean, you must see that with
Nice.
a lot of your work with founders. Often they may not know that a brand story is going to help them accelerate trust.
Yeah.
They may not understand the power of storytelling. They may have a ton of blind spots. And by the way, when you illuminate them, there may be resistance, right? There may be resistance too, which is a part of the journey. But anyway, I digress. So, habit 3, right? Habit 3 is unearth your charisma. And I am curious to know, when I say the word charisma to you, Mariana, what comes up? How would you define it?
That's so interesting. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is my dad. Like
Really?
my entire life, people have said that your dad is so charismatic, and he's a great storyteller. He does a lot of hand movements. He's a lot, he will talk a lot, and I think that's where I get it from. So that's the first thing that came to my mind. I think charisma to me translates in essence as energy, as passion,
Mm,
enthusiasm.
yeah.
Those are kind of the things that come to me.
I love how you mentioned your dad. And from your energy, I get the sense that you're very close to him.
I mean, yeah, he's a huge part of my life.
Yeah. Was he in journalism as well? Given you said he spoke
No,
quite
no, he
well.
wasn't. Mm-mm.
No?
No,
Okay.
he's now working as a tour guide, which
Okay.
post careers. So this is where I think he's thriving, because he gets to use a lot of those talents,
Yeah.
storytelling, and he's a tour guide in the Middle East. So there's a
That's
lot to
cool.
unpack there. So, yep.
That's awesome. They can be the best storytellers when they get it right.
Mm,
And it shifts the entire experience, does it not? It's
100%.
beautiful. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So for me, how I define charisma has evolved.
Okay.
As I look at it in this season of my life, I define charisma as the innate ability to make others feel significant in your presence.
How interesting. Okay.
So it's
So it's funny, because all my definitions were about me, and yes, how I express them, but they were about me. And you're saying, no, it's actually about how they feel. Ah, so cool. Okay. Keep going.
that's my definition. That's my truth.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be yours or the listeners, but how I see it is really charisma is about making others feel like they matter when they're around you. It's about making others feel
Mm,
significant in your presence. And it's interesting when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to delivering a pitch presentation, a lot of the time we're thinking about how I can look significant because we believe
yes.
that's what's going to sell or that's what's going to
Mm,
connect with somebody else. But when we really boil it down to the basics, the best leaders who I've worked with, the most impactful partners, customers, when they know that when you make others feel significant in your presence, loyalty comes.
yes.
I remember one of my first mentors. He used to give me authentic compliments, and in a way that made me feel so seen. I would want to run through a brick wall for this dude. And really, that's actually one of the practices which I teach
Mm,
to unearth your charisma, because I believe everybody has charisma, but it just looks different on different people. A lot of
yeah.
people, when they hear charisma, they go, oh, like Ryan Reynolds. Oh, like Oprah. And what we're seeing is, yes, great speakers. Yes, great conversationalists. But at its core, once again, it's about making people feel like they matter when they are around you. So let's talk about authentic compliments. Now, interestingly, research has actually shown that giving an authentic compliment actually lights up the same part of our brain that gets activated when we receive a financial reward, which is
Oh,
crazy.
wow. Cool. I love neuroscience.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
but it makes sense, does it not? Like, think about the last time you received an authentic and genuine compliment. It probably felt like a fuzzy
Million
warm
bucks.
blanket. Yeah,
Right.
sorry, who's it
A
by?
bag of cash. Psh.
Yeah, exactly. Cha-ching. So there's a difference between, hey, Mariana, that was a great presentation, which is what most people do. It comes from a kind-hearted place, but it lacks depth. But more specifically, it
Right.
lacks three things. It lacks authenticity. I can't even speak there. Authenticity, specificity, and impact. It's late here, people. Okay, I got two kids. It's late here. I've got brain fog.
I
But
couldn't
anyway,
even tell that you mispronounced that. So you're good.
oh, I did. In my head, I was like, "What are you saying, Rav?" Anyway, authenticity, specificity, impact. So authenticity is leading with a positive and genuine observation. Specificity is avoiding being generic.
Yeah.
And I stands for impact, as I said, which is describing the impact that this moment had on you. So let's go back to our example. Hey, Mariana,
Mm,
that was a great presentation. Or I could say, hey, Mariana, that was one of the most amazing presentations I've ever seen at a conference. In the first 3 minutes, when you mentioned that story about your dad being a storyteller and now actually being a tour guide in the Middle East, it just connected with me so deeply. And it's got me thinking, you know what? I think I want to start using more storytelling in my pitches just so I can connect with people better. So, hey, thank you for that.
mm-hmm. Impact, right? I love that.
So different.
Mm-hmm.
So different. So, the idea here is if you want to inspire loyalty, the idea here is to acknowledge others for their gifts, for their genius in a genuine way, and just watch that relationship flourish because everybody wants to
Mm,
feel seen, heard, and understood, don't they?
mm-hmm. So the charisma comes from how does the charisma tie in? Because obviously it's about how you're making them feel in the process.
Yeah. So if I give somebody a genuine compliment and it's received well, I've made them feel significant. I make them
Mhm.
feel like they matter when they're around me because I've given them a compliment that acknowledges them for their genius. It creates depth and intimacy in that relationship. And it allows me to earn what I call the 3 C's of trust, one
Mhm.
of the 3 C's of trust. So from my work, I've boiled it down that in order to build trust, we need to earn the 3 C's: connection, character, competence. So if I can give a genuine compliment, that's really going to connect with somebody on a deep level. That's a win, right? And if I can give a genuine compliment, it's also going to showcase a character of intention. So
Mhm.
just in that compliment, I can really signal, hey, I have a character of intention, and you've been able to connect with somebody. So
Mhm.
you're learning how to build trust also secretly as you go through this process.
Oh, this is so interesting. Folks listening will have heard me talk about this. You might not have yet, but it is very similar to what I teach in our frameworks, which is the
Okay.
4 trust triggers.
Uh-huh.
And so I wrote down your 3 C's, and they actually correlate really, really well with the trust triggers. So
Beautiful.
the trust triggers are just in sentence form. So
Mm.
your audience needs to feel that you get them deeply. You really, really, get where they are. It's all understanding where they're at, where they want to go, where they've been, what things they've tried, all of that. Number two, that you care about them deeply. So I think this is where the character piece comes in. Where anyway, I think the character piece probably ties in with a couple of them, but you care about them deeply. They're not just a number on your Stripe screenshot. They're not just a lead. They're not just somebody that you're making money off of, and how fast can I sell to you, how fast can you buy from me. You actually genuinely care about getting them results. The third trust trigger is that you've got them. So this is where the expertise and in your case the competence comes in. I think would probably correlate there, where they need to feel relief that they're in the best of hands, right? That you've done this before. This is where authority comes in. They're in good hands, and they're going to get results by working with you. And number four, you vibe together, and there's a values match, and they this is your person, right? You want to spend time with them, you want to learn from them, you enjoy them, you like them. Maybe that's where the character piece comes in as well. So I love that we both have similar frameworks to understanding how to make trust, right? Or how to get people to trust us. All right, so habit 3 is acknowledging their genius, or you talked about conscious compliments. Is that how you phrased it?
So habit 3 is unearth your charisma. And
Okay,
one of the practices that I
got
teach
it.
in the book for how to do that is by giving genuine compliments. And the framework is the ASI framework:
Got
authenticity,
it.
specificity, impact.
Perfect. All right, so let's go to habit 4.
Yeah, so habit 4 is right in your wheelhouse, and it's about telling stories that inspire change. And
Mm,
what I believe at a fundamental level is whether you are selling an idea to your boss in a meeting, whether you are selling a service or you're selling a product or you're selling yourself in a job interview, whatever it could be, teach in the book is that one of the most potent stories that you can tell is a social proof story. And when I say a social proof story, I'm going to give you a shortened version or definition of it. Really, what I'm talking about is a narrative that unfolds in a logical series of events that allows somebody to see themselves in the pains, desires, and transformation of your main character,
right.
inspiring imperfect action as a result. So, a lot of people may see this as a customer success story. Yep, it can be seen as that as well. A lot of the teams that I've worked with, for example, as you mentioned, Oracle NetSuite at the start, I delivered the keynote for their sales kickoff many years ago, 2023 now, and the number one story that their leadership team said that their people needed to work on was a customer success story, aka a
Mm,
social
mhm,
proof story.
mhm.
And hey, I can go into frameworks and what makes for a good story, but my question to you is, what do you feel will be most valuable for the audience when it comes to learning how to tell a good story?
From the audience perspective, as they are telling a good story, or from the listener?
Yeah, actually,
or both?
both. Really, I
Or
meant
both, I was
listener.
gonna say,
Sorry,
it
I
could
meant
be both.
listener. Yeah. So whoever's listening to
Yeah,
this, when it
I
comes
think
to a social proof story, what do you feel would be the most impactful for them to know about how to tell a great story that inspires change?
right. I think for me is the end result needs to be the person listening to the story feels like it's possible for them.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay. Brilliant. Well, let's start at the most basic level. Now, American neuroscientist, you like neuroscience, Paul Zak,
Yes.
in his research, and he's got so much on oxytocin, his lab really pioneered a lot of the research around
Wait,
oxytocin.
who are you talking about? Because I think Zach.
Yeah, Paul Zak. Yeah.
I love this guy. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have not talked about this on the, please go ahead.
So
Obsessed with
in
this man.
he's got so much research, as you know, and I talk about it in the book, but there's one thing he said which is just it's just pure brilliance. It really is. And he said, look, I'm paraphrasing, but if you struggle with storytelling, just think about it like this. Start with human struggle, end with triumph. And I'm like, actually,
That's
that
it.
is just genius, is it not?
Yes.
Because we can
Yeah.
complicate this and I can tell you,
Oh
hey,
my
do this,
gosh.
do
Yeah.
this, do that, do that. But the beauty lies in starting with human struggle and ending with
Yeah.
triumph. Now, one
Mhm.
thing I would say is from a lot of the teams and individuals that I've worked with, one thing that they struggle with is being able to add business value with their story, meaning tie their story back to the purpose of the pitch, presentation, or conversation. And what I've
Mhm.
found is one of the most impactful ways to do that is by saying, hey, and here's why this matters to our conversation. Or, hey, here's why this matters to this presentation. Or, hey, here's why this matters to you. And really
Mhm.
tying the moral of the story, the core message of that narrative back to the human being opposite you. Otherwise, it's just, hey, this one time at band camp, right? It's like Michelle in American Pie. And we don't want that. That's not a good look. So I would say that's one thing that is a really easy thing for somebody to add to their story. But if you're struggling, hey, start with human struggle and
That's,
end
yeah,
with
I love
triumph.
that. That's even more simple than the framework that we use, which is life before something happens, life after, and then we pivot to the mission. Obviously, that's the
Beautiful.
founder story.
Yes.
It's as simple as I got it, but that's even better. That's even one
It's
step
even
further.
better.
So
Isn't that? That's
love
cool
that.
that you've got
Very
that arc.
cool.
Is
Yeah.
I love the arc you just mentioned, especially for the brand story that you teach. I can totally
Right.
see how that's woven beautifully into the mission. For me, to build on that, the way I look at it through my lens is in a conversation, I look at it as the four C's. Four C's. I said three there. Four C's. So a
It's late.
story up, the four C's. The four C's, which is context, conflict, change, conclusion. So
Mm,
context, rather, is when we introduce a relatable human being who has a specific desire. The conflict is when they experience, or rather are met with, an obstacle or a
right.
challenge.
Hmm.
The change is the aha moment, which is the catalyst for the transformation. And the conclusion is where the hero goes from pain to glory. And the hero really is, yes, the person you're delivering the story to, because they can see themselves in the main character of your narrative. And really, in a fundamental sense, that is a component. A story arc is a component of my overarching framework. But as I said, if we were, if you just boil it down to basics,
Yeah. I love it.
human
You know
struggle.
what? You know what I do love that we're doing is we're not talking about the hero's journey. The hero's journey is meant for Lord of the Rings. It's meant
Mm,
for big films where there's a lot of characters involved, where there's a lot of, you know, narrative layers to it. You're sitting for an hour and a half or 2 hours. It
mhm.
does not have to be that complicated. It's also meant for, somebody who's really talented scriptwriter or working as a team. Definitely not necessary when we're telling shorter stories for big impact. Just taking that and simplifying it. Love that. Let's head on over to habit number 5.
Habit number 5. Let's talk about becoming the trusted guide. And really, what I'm talking about in this sense is helping others. Actually, scratch that. Let's start with this.
Okay.
Embodying a marathon mindset and helping others realize their desires without self-interest. And what I mean is not losing sight of your desires. I'm talking about removing your death grip on that desire, because that will shift how you show up, that will shift your energy, and it will shift the way you communicate with the spoken word and also your nonverbal communication. So going back to the different practices you can learn to achieve this, one of them, it's quite interesting, and maybe a lot of founders struggle with this, I don't know, you can tell me, but it's when you're asked a question you don't know, how does somebody show up as a trusted guide? So let's say, let's start with an example. Let's say that, the founder is in a pitch, high stakes pitch, and there's a CFO on the call. They've been silent the entire time. The pitch ends and they go, Mariana.
Throat clearing. Yes.
Yeah, because it's about to go down when they do that, right? Like, right. Oh snap, it's about to happen. So, Mariana, could you help me understand how you came up with X, Y, Z, whatever that is? Now, from what I've learned with the people I've worked with and myself, this is when your personal relationship with authenticity is tested, because the desire to be seen as perfect is real. The desire to be seen as perfect is real. And we spoke about instant gratification, right? And one thing which that can really lead to is reactive behavior. And when I say reactive behavior, I'm talking about any behavior that's grounded in scarcity. And to give a full definition, according to the spiritual wisdom of Kabbalah, we're talking about any behavior that's grounded in fear, lack, or scarcity. So in that moment, fear and lack and scarcity can come up saying, I need to lie. I need to say something because I need to look like I've got my ducks in a row. But say we do lie and we make up something and we try and wing it. In almost an instant, we've lost trust. We've lost trust. According to your 4 triggers of trust, we've definitely not been able to show them that we get them, because what we're trying to do in that moment is save face. Alternatively, somebody could say, Jenny, let's assume that's the name of the CFO. Jenny, that's an incredible question that I don't have an answer for. But here's what I'm going to do. After our call, I'm going to make sure I can find you an answer. And if that fails, I'll get you in front of the right person who can. Does that sound fair enough? And for me, when you can become the expert in finding the expert, you can still add value. And your ego is not getting in the way of that human being realizing their desire, aka the CFO getting an answer to their question so they can figure out if you are the right supplier for them.
Right.
I don't know. Is a powerful way to really build trust, because it's rooted in vulnerability, and it also empowers other people in that conversation to do the same, because silent influence is real. People are going to mimic behaviors. They're going to observe behaviors and follow suit.
Yeah. And you know what I think is interesting too, Ravi, because you talked about letting go of our deathly grip on our desires, and how being able to do that I'm just going to put my own spin on it. So I'm not quoting you exactly, but for me, what this means is it's not only confidence that it's going to work out anyway, that you're going to get there anyway, that and this ties back to something you said earlier, which is you're not beholden to a certain path to get there. Right. The point from A to B might not look like what you think it will be. That trajectory, that journey will likely look a lot different than you expect. And I think there's a level of peace and security that comes with that. That is my entrepreneurial journey that started completely bombarded by the gurus who I believed, wholeheartedly that it was possible for me to get to 7 figures in 3 months. It was ridiculous. Like the standards that I set for myself in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey were completely unrealistic, given that I had never built a business before. I had done years and years and years of deep storytelling, but I didn't even understand my own frameworks. I didn't have frameworks when I started. I didn't know how to teach what I knew. And so I was starting from there, being fed all of this rhetoric, this narrative that I could get to a certain number by a certain amount of time came crashing down hard. And even though I was fairly successful, early on, fairly is obviously very subjective, but I fell very short from where I thought I could be, right?
Yeah.
And it I had even, like, I remember this was obviously a few years ago where I was thoroughly depressed at year end. I'm like, this is terrible. I hate this. There's so much anxiety. Like, what what is this, like, amazing entrepreneurial journey that people talk about? I mean, I'm feeling the grit and the grind, but I'm not. Anyway, I had to come to a reckoning that I feel you've described in a different way that I've seen it. But this idea that I will get to whatever point I need to get to in my business. I will grow at whatever pace I'm supposed to grow. I will meet the right people at the right time. I will make obviously it doesn't mean that I'm spending all my days at the beach. I am working. I have a plan. I do the work, right? I put in the reps. I meet the people. I follow up with the people. I invest in learning from people like you just now, and learning how to make those relationships even more meaningful, and takes my skills farther. So I'm involved in all of the growth. I have a direction, but there's so much peace that comes from not. I like the deathly grip because it's so visual, but the idea that when you let go of that, you have, and I think so just to bring it home, I think that's such an important part of what you bring to the table when you meet someone, right?
Mm.
Because I can't tell you how many folks complain about, I luckily haven't been on the receiving end of that too much, but I know there are a lot of folks that go to networking events, that go to conferences and places where we're meeting people who are potential partners, potential customers, potential this, potential that. And they're coming with this agenda, this, like, what can I squeeze out of this room? In fact, somebody recently, I don't think it's this intention behind it, but they talked about, like, ROI in the room. And I think obviously that can be construed in a very negative way and a very positive way. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I feel like that's an important piece of bringing that peace and PEACE, that stability, that calmness to the relationship. I'm curious whether you see it a different way, or whether there is a different layer that I haven't unpacked there.
Well, I will 100% answer your question, but what I'm curious to know about is, when was the moment for you that you had that reckoning? Because you spoke about the first
Mm,
3 months of the business and you were like, okay,
yeah.
pursuing these goals, and it sounded as though, and you can help me understand if I've missed or misunderstood anything, it sounded as though it was from a place of misalignment. But when was the moment you were like, hold on, I'm just going to do things my way?
I would say it was gradual, Ravi. So I think the low point, if you will, of that story was about a year into my business,
Okay.
which it never occurred to me that that was, like, the marker,
Hmm.
until now. Um, and then what I started doing, I had a coach at the time who ironically was kind of part of this part
The
of the
problem.
downfall of my
Okay.
but she did, but you got to eat the meat, spit the bones, right? And I tried to, like, retain as much as I could that I knew was going to be very helpful for me.
Yeah.
And one of the things they kept saying was, it's critical to have the most fun as possible in your business. And
Wow.
it's funny because she would always used to say it's so important to have fun. And then one day she said it that way. She was like, it's critical that you have the most fun. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to pay
Yeah.
attention to this. And I
Yeah.
kept repeating it to myself. So if you go back in my podcast episodes over that time, I would bring it up every episode that was a solo episode, right? Like, oh, it's so important to have fun in your business, and I'm having fun in my and I feel like I was telling myself that before it actually came to be.
Mm.
And so I would say, uh, I started here. It went, my mood obviously has nothing to do with my revenue, but a year in, I was, like, really down in the dumps, and then I gradually, probably, within with 6 months, I would say, of deep work and that shift. It's such a shift, and I don't think it's like an overnight thing. Does that
Yeah.
answer your question?
It does. Yeah. I was actually just curious to know, because I think, look, we're all human beings, and I don't want anybody listening to this right now going, "Oh, this dude never feels fear, lack, scarcity."
Mm,
Like, of course I do. That is human. We can't we can't we can't search for perfection and strive for it, really, if we look at it at a fundamental level, because at the basic level, us human beings are imperfect. And if we are denying our imperfections, then we're denying our humanity. We actually, well, we're not human then, right? And I feel as though there is this shift of consciousness in the world where we're being more open about our perfections and realizing that imperfection equals connection. And hey,
Right.
in response to your question from earlier, and I'd love to know if this resonates with you, but something I really believe deep in my core, and just like you, I've known it intellectually for some time, but the journey to truly embodying it intuitively has been a journey, is that everything is happening for you, not to you. So everything is a gift, meaning that individual that you thought was going to sign that big contract and they didn't, how is that sharpening you? How is that shaping you to transform your identity into the type of person that can sustain and receive their biggest desires? That team member that leaves you, okay, where is the gift in this? Once we've allowed the emotions to really come to the surface and accepted it, where is the gift in this versus dwelling in it? Why me? Why me? And what you said resonates with, which is the
we ain't
idea.
got time for that. No.
And also just inner peace, man. It's just
Yes.
I suppose, once again, you're talking to a person now very different to who he was in his 20s. What I thought success looked like, what I wanted out of life is very different. But, inner peace is where it's at. Inner peace and a regulated nervous system.
Yes, I love that. Yes. Yeah. I mean, they go hand in hand for sure. And for me, in my personal journey, that piece, it was funny that my entire business revolves around trust, because, and I had never made that connection until now. This is so funny. Because in my spiritual journey, I realized that trust was the cornerstone of peace. Like, if I didn't trust that God was guiding me every step of the way and was gonna, that client that didn't sign, what's the situation that I avoided there? Where am I being guided instead? Right. And I had like 2 really big name clients who had basically said yes and backed out. And I was like, whoa, man, that's a blow. But also like, okay, God, where are we going next? What else? What door is opening because that one closed, right? And so it's funny because, again, the trust needed to be there in order for me to have peace. And I feel like, anyway, there's some parallels there. But Ravi, I love our conversation. I could keep going for probably another hour. I know it's late by you, but I want to wrap up and just, before I wrap up, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I'm just saying I received what you said totally. And hey, I'm a big believer in the fact that everything is happening for you, even if you can't see it just yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us do a quick wrap of those 5 habits. I scribbled them down, so hopefully I understand my own handwriting here. But the first one is transform your story. So transform the story that told yourself in your mind and what that means for you. Number 2, do I remember this correctly? Ask empathetic questions.
Close.
No?
It's ask conscious questions.
Conscious questions.
And
one of the types.
One type of conscious question is an empathetic question.
Perfect. I remember you said it was one of the types, but I couldn't remember what the overarching. Got it. Number 3, acknowledge their genius or unearth your charisma, right? Unearth your charisma by acknowledging their genius, by really paying attention to how you're making them feel in your presence, that they matter.
Close. Yes. So it's a yes to unearth your charisma. Yes to defining charisma as making somebody feel significant in your presence. And one way in which we can do that is by acknowledging somebody for their gifts, by giving them a genuine compliment. So you said the same.
There's so much more in the book, I am sure. 4, telling stories that inspire change. And yes, number 5, becoming the trusted guide. There's so much more there. I'm just literally, those are 5 bullet points that I want folks to walk away from this episode with. Obviously, there will be show notes. There's much more from Ravi. You're so prolific on LinkedIn, I'm sure, in many other spaces as well. Where would you like to send folks to connect with you further, Ravi? Obviously, your book is a great place.
Yeah. So, as you know, Relationship Currency is the name of my book. And hey, if you feel excited by what we've spoken about today and it feels expansive and in alignment for you to do so, then I'll make sure that Mariana receives the pre-order link, and you can hit that in the description of the podcast and pre-order your copy, which is a body of work that I'm really excited about. I can't wait. It's going to come out on November 4th. So you've probably got some time until this. I don't know when this goes out, but hey, you've got some time. But otherwise, follow me on LinkedIn, peeps. Follow me on LinkedIn, and it'd be great to connect over there.
Sounds awesome. Ravi, thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like we could have chatted for so much longer, but there's a lot more there to unpack. I can't wait to read your book thoroughly and really feel like I am being even more intentional with how I'm building relationships, which is, can you repeat that soundbite that you gave us in the beginning of our conversation today?
I can't remember what I said exactly, but the best way I like to describe it is that somebody has the keys to your kingdom, and that somebody is another human being. But you've also got to remember that you have the keys to their kingdom as well. So you want to make sure it's a beautiful, balanced energy exchange, and that relationship currency is really about the following. Relationships are sacred, but the word currency has connotations of transaction. But when you pair them together, something beautiful happens, because it's about a co-creation of value that can't be bought, and also helping somebody receive more of what they desire without self-interest. And do that right, then abundance will find you, but not in the way or timing that you may expect. And hey, that's the beauty of it. And hey, just like you listening to this, I have to remind myself of that, right? We all suffer with instant gratification. We're all human, but when we focus on building relationships, I truly believe that is the only currency that matters in the world today. Not Bitcoin, not Ethereum, relationship currency.
Love it. Thank you again, Ravi. We will catch you soon. And everyone, make sure to check out the show notes for those links. And I'll see you on the next episode of Empire Secrets. Bye for now.